She watered the dead plant again today. Same one that's been brown and brittle for weeks. Same one she placed by the window and forgot existed. I watched her do it. No emotion, no expression. She just poured the water, slowly, into dry soil that hadn't responded to her in a long time. Then she walked away, leaving a puddle on the windowsill. Didn't even wipe it. She does this every morning now, and I don't think it has anything to do with the plant. I don't say anything, of course. We're long past saying things. I just sit at the kitchen table pretending to scroll my phone, pretending not to notice how she flinches when my chair scrapes the floor. This is how mornings go now. She brews coffee. Doesn't ask if I want any. I toast bread. She sighs, like the sound of it offends her. We move like strangers playing a married couple in a play they both regret auditioning for. She used to hum when she cooked. Now she cooks with her earbuds in, like the kitchen is just another room to escape into. She doesn't look at me unless something breaks. A glass. A bowl. The microwave once sparked, and she finally looked up, just for a second, and then back down. I left my wallet in the fridge last week. On purpose. She didn't say a word. We don't fight. I wish we fought. Fighting would mean there's something left to fight for. She started writing her name on grocery items. I'm not kidding. A black Sharpie on her almond milk. The freezer is now hers, and the mini one in the basement is mine. We haven't spoken about it, but that's the unspoken arrangement. Last night, she watched a movie alone in the living room. I stood in the hallway, just out of sight. I wasn't trying to be creepy. I just wanted to hear her laugh again. She didn't. The credits rolled. She shut off the TV, walked right past me, didn't notice I was there. Or maybe she did, and pretended not to. Either one hurts. This morning, she watered the plant. Again, and something in me clicked. Not snapped. Not broke. Just quietly clicked. Like a door finally unlocking from the inside. So I opened a drawer, pulled out a single envelope I'd sealed weeks ago, labeled with nothing. I walked upstairs, grabbed the small bag I had pre-packed 3 Mondays ago, back when I still hoped I wouldn't need it. I left the ring on top of the Sharpa-labeled almond milk. And I walked out the front door, slowly, carefully, like I didn't want to wake her, even though she was already awake, watering something that stopped needing her long ago. It's been 6 days since I walked out. Not that she knows. I mean, maybe she does by now. I didn't exactly slam the door. No dramatic, I'm leaving. No note on the mirror with smeared handwriting and tears. I just disappeared, like a draft that slips out the window before anyone feels the chill. And no, she hasn't called. I left my phone on, of course. Part of me stupidly thought she might notice within the hour. Thought maybe I'd hear that familiar vibration and see her name light up the screen with some kind of panic or even anger. Something. Anything. But instead, it's been silence. Not even a text. Which is worse than yelling, worse than blame. Silence lets you imagine 1,000 things, and none of them are good. I'm not staying at a hotel. I couldn't stand the sterility, the little shampoo bottles, the TV with local news always too loud. Instead, I'm renting the upstairs room of a farmhouse owned by a retired math teacher who doesn't ask many questions. It smells like dust and old pine, and there's a window that looks out over a field of nothing. No traffic, no footsteps, just wind. It's the perfect place to vanish. But here's the thing I didn't expect. The dog. Not mine. Hers. Our mutt, Milo. A rescue she picked out without telling me. A shaggy little terrier mix who never listened to commands, but slept between us like he belonged there before I did. When she started pulling away, I swear he noticed before I did. He stopped following her around the house. Started sleeping by the front door. Some nights, he'd sit there and whine. Low, soft, like a baby trying not to cry. Before I left, I knelt down and looked him in the eyes. I'm sorry, buddy, I whispered. I don't think she wants either of us anymore. He just licked my hand and pressed his head into my leg. And then, in the weirdest, most human way, he sat down next to the door like he was saying, I get it. But here's where it gets weird. Yesterday, while I was scrolling through a mindless feed of nothing, my phone lit up with a motion alert from the old security camera I forgot to disable. It was placed in the hallway, facing the front door. The feed was glitchy, full of static and pixel blur, but one thing was clear. Milo was scratching at the door. Not barking, not howling, just scratching, over and over, clawing at it like something was on the other side. And then he sat, waited, whined. He did this for 4 hours straight. I know because I watched it all in numb fascination, replaying the clip on loop. She never appeared. Not once. She didn't check on him. Didn't scold him. Nothing. It's like he was scratching for someone he knew wasn't coming back, and still couldn't stop trying. That image burned itself into my brain more than anything she ever did. Because Milo, dumb as he was, still cared. I wish I could say that broke me. That I drove straight home, kicked open the door, and gave her some dramatic monologue about how love dies when you stop watering it. But I didn't. I just sat there, watching, drinking black coffee I didn't want, feeling everything and nothing at once, and still nothing from her. I didn't expect an apology. Not really. But maybe a "where are you?" or a passive-aggressive "forgot to take your chargers." Instead, she's doing what she's always done, nothing. But if I'm being honest, that's not what keeps me up at night. It's the plant. Yeah, the one she keeps watering every morning, even though it's obviously dead. Because 2 days ago, it wasn't by the window anymore. It was gone. And the next morning, it was back. In a different pot. Looking a little less dead. The weird thing about silence is that you start to hear patterns in it. Like how a dripping faucet doesn't just drip, it taps out a message. Like it's trying to say something to anyone paying attention. Ava's silence was like that. Before I left, I'd memorized the rhythm of it. Not just the absence of words, but the things that replaced them. The fridge would open and close 3 times before she decided what to eat. The microwave beeped once, then twice, then she'd cancel it. Always cancel it before it finished. Like she didn't even want the food to be warm, just tolerable. She used to pour wine at exactly 7:12 p.m. I watched it happen like clockwork. Not 7:10, not 7:15, always 12 minutes past the hour. I told myself she wasn't unraveling, that maybe she just liked routine. But deep down I knew. People in mourning create rituals. And Ava, she was mourning something. I just didn't realize it was me. The day after the plant moved, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I even began to doubt myself. Maybe it had been in that new pot the whole time, and I never noticed. Maybe the original pot broke. Maybe she finally got rid of it and bought a new one. But something about it felt off. Like when someone smiles at you but the smile doesn't reach their eyes. So I checked the footage again. Frame by frame. I still had a backdoor login to the camera system, and though the quality was garbage, I could tell enough. The plant had disappeared from the hallway window on Tuesday morning. Ava walked into frame, cup in hand, stared at the empty spot, then left. 15 minutes later, she came back into frame holding a different pot. Slightly taller, darker clay. The plant in it looked almost identical. But not quite. This one wasn't as brittle, not as brown. She placed it down gently, watered it like usual, and just stood there, staring at it for a full 36 seconds before walking away. I know. I timed it. Something about that chilled me more than it should have. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid on the stiff mattress in the farmhouse room, staring at the ceiling fan as it ticked and wobbled above me. I kept thinking about the way she looked at that plant, the intensity in her eyes. The kind of attention I hadn't seen her give anything in months. Not me. Not Milo. Not even herself. So why the plant? I went on a walk to clear my head. The field behind the house was endless and open and perfectly empty, which made it worse somehow. Out there, the quiet was honest. Unlike home, where the silence had turned into a third presence in the house. A ghost we both pretended not to notice. Around 2 a.m., I got another notification. Motion alert. I hesitated before checking it. Part of me didn't want to know, but I tapped it anyway. The feed showed the living room. Milo was on the couch, alone, tail wagging faintly. He kept glancing toward the hallway, where the plant was. But Ava never entered. Instead, Milo jumped down, walked toward the plant, stopped, and barked. Once, then twice. Then he sat down, stared at it, and whimpered. I swear to God, I have never seen that dog whimper at an object before. He wasn't afraid of thunder, fireworks, even the vacuum cleaner. But this dead plant, or whatever it had become, made him curl into a corner and shake. That was the moment I knew I had to go back. Not because I missed her. Not because I hoped she wanted me. But because something was wrong. Not wrong with us. Not just emotionally. Not just romantically. Wrong with the house. Because the woman I left behind wasn't grieving me. She was grieving the part of herself that disappeared before I did. And whatever was growing in that new pot, I don't think she brought it home. I think it brought her something. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was nearly dusk. The sky was smeared with this thick, orange haze that looked more like smoke than sunlight. I remember thinking, It shouldn't feel this unfamiliar. But the house, it didn't feel like mine anymore. It didn't even feel like I'd ever lived there. It felt like visiting a memory someone else had of me. The porch light was already on. That was strange. Ava always waited until full dark. She said early lighting attracts bugs and burglars. But there it was, glowing faint yellow through the misty air, like it had been waiting for someone. Just not me. I sat in the car for a while, engine off, windows up, hands clenched around the steering wheel like I was bracing for an impact that had already happened. My duffel bag was in the back seat. I wasn't planning on staying. I just told myself I needed to check on Milo. Make sure he was okay. Maybe take him with me. If she hadn't noticed he was broken, too. As I stepped out, gravel crunched under my boots, loud in the quiet. Too loud. There was no wind, no distant cars, not even birds. And that silence, not Ava's this time, but the world's, pressed against me like a thick coat I couldn't peel off. I walked up the steps. The front door was locked, of course. She probably thought I didn't have my key anymore. But I did. She hadn't changed the locks. Part of me hoped she had. I turned it slowly. The click sounded like a snap of bones. When I pushed the door open, I was met by a strange smell. Not bad. Not rotting or dirty. Just different. Like warm stone. Or soil after a heavy rain. There was a dampness to it that didn't belong in any house, let alone ours, or what used to be ours. The hallway was dim. Lights off. I glanced toward the windowsill. The plant was there. New pot. Same exact position. I froze. Not because of the plant, but because of the air. The house didn't recognize me. I'm aware of how insane that sounds. But I swear, the second I crossed the threshold, it was like walking into a stranger's space. The temperature was wrong. The shadows sat in different corners than they used to. The floor creaked in the wrong places. And when I whispered Milo, like I'd done 100 times before, nothing came back. No jingling collar. No excited bark. Silence. I stepped deeper in, shoes echoing too sharply against the hardwood. Ava's purse was on the counter. Her laptop was open, but there was no sign of her. I peeked into the kitchen, untouched. The fridge still had those passive-aggressive labels on things. Her milk, her yogurt, her space. And then I heard it. Not a bark, not a growl. A scraping sound. From upstairs. Long, repetitive. Rhythmic. I should have left right then. Should have walked backwards, closed the door, driven back to the dusty farmhouse, and never looked back. But something pulled me forward. I crept up the staircase, each step groaning louder than it should. I stopped halfway up, heart hammering so hard it felt like it echoed off the drywall. The sound grew clearer. Not scraping. Dragging. Like something being pulled slowly across the floor. My mouth was dry. My fingers numb. I reached the top of the stairs and turned toward our bedroom. The door was ajar. Light spilled out in strange, flickering pulses. Like candlelight. Except we didn't own any candles. I pushed the door gently. It creaked. That part, at least, hadn't changed. And what I saw inside. She was there. Ava. Sitting cross-legged on the floor. In complete silence. Surrounded by dirt. Piles of it. Like she had been digging inside the house. Her hands were covered in soil. Her fingernails were black with it. She didn't look up. Didn't flinch. Just kept placing her fingers in the earth and whispering something under her breath. The plant sat in front of her. The same plant. But not the same. It looked larger now. Fuller. Its leaves darker than before, almost waxy. And Milo? He was lying beside it. Perfectly still. Eyes open. Not blinking. Just watching it. Or maybe watching her. I opened my mouth to speak, to say her name, ask what the hell she was doing, but nothing came out. I just stood there, breathing too loud, heart caving in on itself. Then, suddenly, she looked up, right at me, and smiled. But not the Ava I remembered. This smile was peaceful. Too peaceful. Like someone who had finally given up trying to feel human. She didn't say my name. She didn't gasp, or smile wider, or cry, or demand to know why I was back. She just looked at me, kneeling in the middle of a ring of dirt, like I was no more surprising than a gust of wind. Her hands were still in the soil, slowly turning and folding it like it was something sacred, something alive. Her breathing was steady, almost mechanical, controlled in a way that didn't match the madness of the scene. There were lines on her face I hadn't seen before, deeper shadows under her eyes. But it wasn't exhaustion. It was peace. A kind of peace that doesn't come from rest, but from release. The kind that settles in after you've stopped resisting something. Like she had finally accepted a truth I hadn't even discovered yet. I whispered her name. My voice cracked in my throat. I hadn't used it in days, maybe weeks, not in a real way. The sound of it felt foreign. She blinked slowly, as if hearing it again from me carried no weight anymore. Her hands pressed down in the dirt one final time, and then she stood up in a single, smooth motion. Her shirt was stained with soil. Her bare feet left dark smudges on the hardwood floor. But none of that mattered, because the way she was looking at me made everything else disappear. Not hateful, not even sad, just quiet, like she didn't expect me to be real. "You shouldn't have come back," she said finally, her voice hoarse like she hadn't used it much lately. She wasn't angry, just stating a fact. I felt like a trespasser in a home I used to own half of. "I came for Milo," I answered, barely audible. "And I wanted to see if I noticed," she finished, nodding. "That you were gone." The silence that followed that sentence was so loud it pushed against my ribs. I should have said something. I should have demanded answers. What the hell was going on here? Why was there dirt inside our house? Why was the plant so damn important? But instead, I stood in the doorway, stunned by how calm she was. Calm in a way that made me feel like I was the problem for reacting. I glanced at Milo. He didn't move. His eyes were glassy, but he was breathing. Barely. He didn't even flick his ears when I stepped forward. He just stayed there, pressed to the floor like gravity had doubled in this one room, and he couldn't lift himself out of it. I crouched beside him, reached out, and ran my fingers through his fur. It was cold. Not dead, just wrong. Like he'd been left out in the wind too long. His body twitched slightly, a reaction, not a response. "You remember the garden?" Ava asked, her voice suddenly behind me. I looked up at her, startled. She was staring out the window now, her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. "The one we tried to grow. Tomatoes. Basil. The strawberries you swore you could keep alive." I remembered. Of course I remembered. The soil was rocky. We never turned it right. The sun hit that patch at the worst angle, and we fought about it constantly. She wanted to keep trying. I gave up first. I remember the day I pulled up the last shriveled vine and said, "Let's just buy from the farmer's market like everyone else." "I buried something there," she said quietly. "After you left. Not because I hated you. I didn't. Not even then. I just wanted to bury the noise. The memories. The weight of pretending." I didn't know what to say. I stood there, awkwardly, still kneeling beside a dog that barely recognized me, in a room filled with disturbed earth. I felt like a child watching his parents pack up without explanation. Like I'd missed 1,000 conversations that were never spoken aloud. She turned to face me again. "You think I stopped loving you," she said. "But the truth is, I ran out of self to love you with. Do you understand what that means?" I didn't. Not really. But I nodded anyway, and that made her smile again. That same too peaceful, too empty smile. The light flickered. Not the ceiling light, there wasn't one on. But something outside. The porch light. It buzzed, then dimmed, then flared brighter. The kind of flare that feels almost pulsing. That's when I noticed it. The soil in the pot had begun to shift. Subtle, but unmistakable. A slow sinking in the center, like something inside was adjusting. Not growing, moving. Ava didn't react. She simply walked over to it and placed her hand on the rim, like you would to quiet a shaking table. "Don't be afraid of it," she said softly. "It only replaces what was already gone." I stood up too fast. The room swam around me. I suddenly felt like I hadn't eaten in days. My head throbbed with the weight of things I didn't understand. "I need to go," I said. Ava didn't stop me. She didn't plead or shout or chase. She just knelt again and pressed her fingers back into the soil as the room dimmed with the last light of day. But just before I stepped out the door, I turned back for one final look. And I swear, for the briefest second, the plant turned toward me. I didn't drive back to the farmhouse that night. I didn't drive anywhere. I sat in my car, parked halfway down the street from the house, hands gripping the wheel like it was the only solid thing I had left. The engine was off, but I didn't get out. I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the windows of a home that didn't remember me. That didn't need to. Because by the time I left the first time, truth be told, I had already vanished. Not physically, but in every way that matters. I'd been eroding inside that house for a long time. Ava hadn't been the one who started it. I wish I could blame her. It would have made leaving cleaner. Easier. But I think it began the day I stopped asking her about her thoughts. Not her day, her thoughts. There's a difference, and I chose the easier one. I asked if she needed anything from the store, if she'd remembered to pay the gas bill, if she could move her car so I could back mine out. I stopped seeing her, and in turn, she stopped showing up. You want to know how a marriage dies? It's not a blowout, not a betrayal. It's a slow suffocation under the weight of things neither of you say. And then, one day, you're sitting across from each other eating microwave dinners and scrolling separate phones, and there's no fight left to have because you've both already lost. And yet I stayed. I kept pretending that the weight wasn't crushing me, that I was still a man with something to offer, that we were just going through a phase, that it was fixable. But there was one night, about 3 weeks before I left, that shattered that illusion entirely. We were lying in bed. She was turned away, as usual. No good night, no contact. I couldn't sleep, so I got up and walked to the kitchen. I stood there in the dark, just breathing, trying to decide whether to cry or scream or just open the back door and walk into the woods like some cliché. And that's when I heard it. Not a sound, not footsteps, just her voice. Very soft, almost whispering. But it wasn't to me. I crept back to the hallway, barefoot, careful. I peeked through the half-open bedroom door. She was sitting upright, still facing away from me, back rigid. Her phone wasn't in her hand. No earbuds. Just her, whispering. Not yet, she said. It's not ready. A pause. Then she added, he still thinks there's something to save. I nearly dropped the glass I'd been holding. My blood went cold. She wasn't on a call. I could see both her hands in her lap. She wasn't hallucinating. She wasn't sleep-talking. I know the difference. She was awake, clear, calm, talking to someone, or something. I backed away without making a sound. That was the first night I slept in my car. The next morning, she didn't ask where I'd been, didn't comment on the pillow missing from the bed. She just made toast, watered the plant, and stared out the window for 20 minutes. Like the night before had never happened. But I couldn't unhear it. That voice, that certainty in her tone. She wasn't angry. She wasn't scared. She was resolved. And when she said he still thinks there's something to save, it didn't feel like a comment about us. It felt like she was talking about me, not to me. That's when I started planning to disappear. Not to punish her, not even to escape her, but because, suddenly, I didn't feel like I was the only one in the house anymore. There were shadows that moved where they shouldn't. Whispers in rooms I hadn't entered. Plants that changed shape in the corner of my eye. And every time I looked at Ava, I saw less of the woman I had once loved and more of a shape I couldn't define. A shape that seemed to be replacing her. I began leaving drawers open. Tiny ones. Just to see. The next morning, they'd be shut again. Lights I didn't remember turning on were left glowing through the night. My laptop had tabs open I hadn't touched. My toothbrush was dry, like I hadn't used it in days, except I had. I don't know if it was Ava, or the house, or the thing in the pot, but something had decided that I was no longer necessary. So I left, quietly, without a scene, without closure, because something in me knew that if I stayed even one more night, I wouldn't have the strength to leave it all. And now, after stepping foot inside again and seeing the dirt on her hands, hearing her speak in riddles, and watching that plant pulse like it was breathing, I'm starting to wonder if I didn't leave too late. It happened on a Thursday. That much I'm sure of. I remember because Thursdays used to be takeout night. We used to argue over it in the best way. Her craving Thai, me pushing for pizza, both of us knowing we'd end up ordering both and watching something awful on Netflix. But that was before. Long before. The last real Thursday was maybe 6 months before everything rotted. This one was different. I came home early, which I never did. The client I'd been working for, a small contract gig doing back-end UX on a meditation app, ironically, had their funding pulled. Just like that. Sorry for the sudden cancellation, Ezra. The email said, we appreciate your flexibility. I stared at the screen for a while, then shut the laptop and decided not to tell Ava. There didn't seem to be a reason anymore. When I opened the front door, it was already dark. Lights were off, blinds closed. There was no music, no television. I didn't hear the usual hum of the dryer or the tapping of her keyboard. Just silence, the kind that feels vacuum-sealed. I slipped off my shoes and called out, gently, like a stranger in someone else's home. Nothing. I checked the kitchen. Still warm from something cooked hours ago. 2 plates, untouched, on the table. Hers and mine. But only 1 fork. I stared at them for too long, wondering what the logic was behind that. Had she meant to eat with me? Changed her mind? Or did she just set the second plate out of habit? A ghost gesture? I walked through the hall and found the bathroom door shut. The light was on beneath it, just a thin orange glow that flickered now and then, like a candle or a faulty bulb. I knocked softly. No answer. Knocked again. Ava. Still nothing. I tried the handle. Locked. That was the first time she ever locked the door. Not just the bathroom, any door. She wasn't a door-locking person. Said it made the house feel like a trap, not a home. She'd even get upset if I locked the bedroom at night during storms. "What are you afraid of?" she'd asked once. But this time she locked it, and she stayed inside for hours. I sat outside that door for 37 minutes. I timed it, because when you don't have anyone to talk to, you start obsessing over numbers. I asked her gently if she was okay. I asked if she needed anything. I even made a joke, something about her starting a secret spa in there. I laughed, hoping maybe she'd laugh too. But she didn't. Nothing. No water running. No movement. No sound of drawers. Just that damn flickering glow under the door and silence on the other side. Eventually, I gave up and walked away. Not out of anger. I just couldn't stand how loud my heartbeat was in that hallway. I made myself a drink. Sat on the couch. Milo curled up beside me, head on my leg, eyes open and alert. He was tense that night. He kept looking toward the hallway, ears twitching like he could hear something I couldn't. Hours passed. I fell asleep there, on the couch, half upright with Milo as a weight against my ribs. And then I heard the door open. It was around 3 a.m. Not a creak. Ava always oiled the hinges. Just a soft click, and the faintest whisper of footsteps on tile. I didn't move. I stayed perfectly still, pretending to sleep. I don't know why. I wasn't afraid. Not yet. I just didn't want her to know I'd been listening. Watching. Hoping. I heard her walk past the living room, toward the hallway window, where the plant used to be. I opened my eyes just slightly, enough to glimpse her silhouette in the dim orange from the streetlight outside. She wasn't carrying anything, but her hands were dirty, like she'd been digging. And then, without turning, she whispered something, just loud enough to cut the silence. "He'll be gone soon." I thought she was talking to herself, but then I realized she wasn't. She was facing the empty window, the one we always kept the plant near, the one where, for months, she stood every morning and stared into nothing while sipping coffee she never finished. Now there was no plant, just darkness, a rectangle of black framed in pale curtains. And she was talking to it. I stayed frozen, eyes barely open, heart stuttering in my chest. I wanted to speak, to confront her, to ask her what the hell was happening. But something told me not to. Something inside me, old, primal, unreasoning, said, "Don't interrupt." She stood there for a minute longer, then turned and walked into the bedroom. The door closed behind her. No lock. No noise. I sat up slowly, Milo still tense, his ears flattened back. And that's when I realized something that chilled me more than anything she'd said. The dirt under her nails hadn't been brown. It was gray, ashy, like dust that doesn't come from a garden, but from something that used to be alive. It's been 5 months. The house is no longer mine. I sold it. Not to Ava, not to anyone we knew. Just let it go through an agent. Told them not to contact me about anything, not even a price. I didn't want a number attached to it. I didn't want paperwork or keys or the finality of signatures. I just wanted it gone. I never went back inside after that last night. Didn't even return to collect my things. The only thing I took with me was Milo. And even that felt like a miracle. He was barely himself at first. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't respond. For 2 weeks, he just sat by the window of the new place. A small studio I found on the coast, staring at the door like he expected something to follow us. But it didn't. Whatever Ava had been talking to in that house, whatever had started growing in her and around her, it stayed. It never wanted me. Only her. And maybe she wanted it, too. I won't pretend I understand what happened back there. I don't think I ever will. I'm not sure she did, either. Whether it was madness or grief or something stranger. Whether the house had turned on us, or if we had just withered inside it together until something unnatural took root in the silence. But I know this. I am not afraid anymore. A few weeks ago, I found Milo sitting in the sun for the first time. Eyes closed, head tilted up, breathing deep like he was remembering how to feel warm. And when I reached down to scratch behind his ears, he wagged his tail, slow, soft, but steady. That night, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I cooked dinner. Real dinner. Not from a box. I played music, jazz, the stuff Ava used to roll her eyes at, and opened the window to let the ocean breeze in. Milo lay on the rug chewing a toy he hadn't touched in months. And I laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't long. But it was mine. I've started going on walks. Real ones. Long ones. I even met someone. Not in a romantic way. Not yet. Just a kind woman named Claire who works at the local bookstore and always recommends novels I'd never pick for myself. She laughs too loud, talks too fast, and has dirt permanently under her nails from keeping too many plants on her windowsill. I told her I don't do plants anymore. She nodded like she understood. But last week, she surprised me with something small, a tiny ceramic pot, no bigger than a teacup, with a single sprout poking out of the soil. She said it was lavender. Hard to kill, she smiled. Even for emotionally repressed men with unresolved ghost trauma. I didn't want to take it. But I did. And this morning, I watered it. Gently. Without fear. The house I'm in now creaks in all the right places. The floors whine when I make midnight tea, and the windows rattle when it storms. But it feels alive in the right way. Like it's breathing with me, not through me. And when I look at the plant by the window, I see green. Just green. Nothing watching. Nothing waiting. Just a second chance.